Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I never really knew my dad growing up. It was just me, my little sister, and our mom. She was our rock, working two jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. Dad would pop in every couple months, acting like he was doing us some big favor by grazing us with his presence. The thing is, he wasn't even sure I was his kid. He actually told me once that his name wasn't on my birth certificate for that reason, as if that was supposed to make me feel better or something. When I was 15, Mom finally convinced him to take a paternity test. Lo and behold, I was his daughter after all. Did that change anything? Nope. He still only showed up every few months, usually empty-handed and full of excuses. Fast forward to last year. I met the most amazing guy, and we've been dating for a couple years. He proposed, and I was over the moon. We decided to have a little celebration dinner with both our families. This meant a 3-hour drive to the city where my dad lived, but I figured it was worth it to share our happiness with everyone. So there we were at this fancy restaurant. My fiancé and I were beaming, showing off the ring and talking about our plans. That's when my dad decided to open his big mouth. My dad made a joke about my fiancé not asking for his permission to marry me. He said it like it was the funniest thing in the world. I felt my blood starting to boil, but before I could say anything, my fiancé spoke up. My fiancé played along with a joke, claiming that was why he had come for the weekend. He said it with a big grin on his face, as if he was in on the joke. Everyone at the table burst out laughing, including my dad. They all thought it was hilarious. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there, gripping my napkin under the table so hard my knuckles are turning white. All I could think was how ridiculous this was. I was furious at how my dad was trying to make this about him, as if he'd ever been there for me for more than a day every couple of months. I was angry that he thought he had any right to give permission for anything in my life. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell him exactly what I thought of his little joke. But I didn't want to ruin the dinner or embarrass my fiancé. So I sat there forcing a smile and pretending everything was fine. The rest of the dinner was a blur. I barely tasted the food, just nodding and smiling at all the right moments. My fiancé kept shooting me concerned looks, but I shook my head slightly. This wasn't the time or place. Later that night, back in our hotel room, I finally let it all out. I told my fiancé everything, how hurt and angry I was, how my dad had no right to act like he had any say in my life decisions. My wonderful fiancé just held me and listened, letting me vent all my frustrations. My fiancé apologized, saying he had no idea it would upset me so much. He explained that he thought playing along would be easier than causing a scene. I assured him it wasn't his fault and that he couldn't have known. I admitted that I should have warned him about what my dad was like. When my fiancé asked what I wanted to do now, I thought about it for a long moment. Then an idea started to form. I suggested that we elope. My fiancé was surprised and asked if I was serious. I confirmed that I was, explaining that we could use the money we save on a big wedding for a down payment on a house instead. I added that this way we wouldn't have to deal with any more jokes from my dad. My fiancé's face lit up, and he enthusiastically agreed to the plan. So that's exactly what we did. We got married a month later, just the two of us, on a beautiful beach at sunset. No drama, no entitled dad trying to make it about himself. Just us starting our life together. We used the money we saved to buy our first home, and you know what? We didn't tell my dad until after we'd moved in. When he found out, he had the nerve to act offended that he wasn't invited to the wedding. I responded by telling him that I didn't want to bother him, reminding him that he wasn't even sure he was my dad until I was 15. He sputtered and tried to make excuses, but I wasn't having it. I told him that I was happy now, with an amazing husband and a beautiful home. I explained that if he wanted to be part of my life going forward, that was fine, but he didn't get to play the hurt father when he was never really a father to begin with. He left pretty quickly after that. I don't know if he'll ever change, but I'm done letting his actions affect my happiness. My husband and I are building our own family now, one based on love and trust, not obligation and entitlement. And you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. About a year ago, I landed my dream job as an assistant chef at this upscale restaurant downtown. I'd always loved cooking but never imagined I could make a career out of it. My parents wanted me to become a lawyer or doctor, the usual stuff, but I decided to follow my passion instead. The head chef took me under his wing, teaching me all the tricks of the trade. He's this big, burly guy with a heart of gold. Think of a teddy bear in a chef's hat. Anyway, I was loving every minute of it. The kitchen became my second home. Now, about 6 months into my job, I met this amazing guy at a friend's party. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love for obscure 80s movies and spicy food. We started dating and things were going great. He was sweet, funny, and treated me like a queen. Little did I know, this relationship would lead to the craziest day of my life. So, there I was in the kitchen during the lunch rush. The restaurant was packed and we were all bustling around preparing dishes left and right. I was at my station, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry when I heard a commotion near the kitchen entrance. I looked up and saw this woman with wild eyes and messy hair barging in. She was screaming something, but I couldn't make out the words over the noise of the kitchen. As she got closer, I realized she was pointing at me. The woman, who I'll call Karen, started yelling at me. She accused me of stealing her man, calling me a homewrecker. I was completely confused and tried to explain that I didn't know who she was or what she was talking about. I asked her to leave, explaining that this was a busy kitchen and she wasn't allowed back here. Karen refused to leave, threatening to teach me a lesson. She lunged at me, trying to grab my hair. I managed to dodge her, but she knocked over a tray of appetizers in the process. The head chef, who had been watching the whole thing unfold, finally stepped in. The head chef told Karen to leave immediately, or he'd call the police. Karen insulted him and told him to stay out of it, saying this was between her and me. She made another grab for me, but the head chef blocked her path. That's when things got really crazy. Karen's eyes darted around the kitchen and she spotted a pot of oil heating up on the stove. Before anyone could react, she grabbed it and turned towards me. Karen threatened to pour the hot oil on me, saying she wanted to see how pretty I'd look after that. Time seemed to slow down as she started to throw the pot at me. I was frozen in place, unable to move. But suddenly a large figure stepped in front of me. It was the head chef. He caught Karen's arm mid-throw, causing the oil to spill on the floor instead. The head chef forcefully told Karen that enough was enough. Karen, enraged that her plan was foiled, did something I still can't believe. She bit the chef's arm. Hard. He let out a yell of pain and instinctively reached for the nearest object, which happened to be a heavy cast iron pan. What happened next was like something out of a cartoon. The chef swung the pan, and it connected squarely with Karen's face with a resounding clang. She stumbled backward, a dazed look on her face, before collapsing on the floor. The kitchen was dead silent for a moment before erupting into chaos. Someone called the police, while others tended to the chef's bite wound. I just stood there trying to process what had just happened. When the police arrived, Karen was still on the floor, mumbling incoherently about how I had stolen her boyfriend. As they were handcuffing her, I finally pieced together what was going on. This woman was my boyfriend's ex, the one he had told me about, the one who couldn't accept that their relationship was over and had been harassing him for months. I explained to the police officer that I believed the woman was my boyfriend's ex who had been stalking him. The officer replied that she would have plenty of time to think about her actions in a cell, mentioning the serious charges she was facing for assaulting kitchen staff and attempting to throw hot oil. As they were leading her away, Karen started screaming again, insisting that this wasn't over and that my boyfriend belonged to her. I responded by telling her that she needed serious help. The restaurant had to close for the rest of the day. The health department had to be called because of the mess in the kitchen. My boyfriend rushed over as soon as he heard what happened, worried sick about me. Later, we found out that Karen had been following my boyfriend for weeks, trying to find out if he was seeing someone new. She had spotted us having dinner at the restaurant a few days before and had been staking the place out, waiting for a chance to confront me. The cherry on top of this crazy Sunday, Karen ended up with a broken nose from the pan to the face. I can't say I feel bad about it. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? In the end, Karen got slapped with a restraining order along with charges for assault, trespassing, and destruction of property. My boyfriend and I are still going strong, and I'm more in love with my job than ever. I'm a college student living in Turkey. My life was pretty normal until that fateful day when a massive earthquake hit. Our city was at the epicenter, and while our house survived, it was like everything inside got tossed in a blender. Shelves came crashing down, and with them, my prized collection of Gundam model kits. Now you might be wondering why I care so much about some plastic models. Well, these weren't just toys to me. Each one represented hours of painstaking work, but more importantly, they were a connection to my grandfather. He introduced me to the hobby when I was just a kid, and we spent countless hours building kits together. It became our thing, you know. When the dust settled and I surveyed the damage, my heart sank. Almost every single kit was shattered beyond repair. But then, like a miracle, I spotted it. My MG, the O. This wasn't just any kit. It was the last one my grandfather and I had worked on together before he passed away. We'd gone all out, customizing it to make it truly unique. Seeing it there, unscathed amidst the wreckage, felt like a sign. Like my grandfather was still watching over me somehow. Months passed and life slowly started to return to normal. My mom decided it was time to have the family over for dinner, including my Aunt B. Now Aunt B has always been difficult, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened that night. She showed up with her 8-year-old son in tow. This kid, I swear he's like a tornado of entitlement. While the adults were having coffee, he burst into my room demanding to play on my computer. I was in the middle of editing a video for my college society, with the camera on and everything, so I politely explained that I couldn't let him use the computer at that moment. This turned out to be a big mistake. The kid ran off crying to his mother, and next thing I know, Aunt B stormed into my room, yelling loudly about my behavior. I tried to explain the situation, but she wouldn't listen to my reasons. And that's when it happened. While I was distracted by Aunt B's outburst, her son climbed onto my desk, grabbed my prized MG-THE-O, and promptly dropped it on the floor. But it didn't end there. The child then proceeded to stomp on it. I lost my temper. All I could think about was my grandfather, the hours we'd spent together, the memories attached to that model. I let loose a torrent of angry words. Aunt B, of course, started yelling even louder about how I was overreacting to what she called a toy and insisted that she wasn't going to pay for anything. My mom, bless her, initially tried to calm everyone down, but when she realized which kit it was, the one I'd built with her father, she quickly changed from peacekeeper to fierce defender of our family's memories. We decided to take legal action. A lawyer friend who specializes in family cases advised us that with the video evidence from my camera, we had a solid case. He suggested trying to settle out of court first, to save on costs. I put together a list of everything I'd need to recreate the kit exactly as it was. With the customizations and the current exchange rate, it came to about 20,000 USD, or around 25 to 27,000 Turkish lira. When presented with this, Aunt B laughed dismissively and refused to pay anything. So, off to court we went. Aunt B tried every trick in the book to delay and avoid paying, but the judge wasn't fooled by her tactics. In the end, she was ordered to pay 1,650 USD, plus any import taxes on the replacement kits, and all court and lawyer fees. This is where things get really wild. The court case completely drained Aunt B's savings. Her husband, who'd apparently been looking for an out for a while, seized the opportunity and filed for divorce. When the dust settled, Aunt B had lost everything. Her savings, her house down payment, custody of her kid, and even her chance at alimony. Now, you might think I'd be happy about this, but honestly, I'm not. I don't feel sorry for her, mind you. She and her kid made their choices and had to face the consequences. But I take no joy in seeing someone's life fall apart. I do feel for her ex-husband though. The poor guy's got his work cut out for him trying to undo years of entitled parenting. You'd think this would be the end of the story, right? Oh, how I wish it was. The deadline the judge gave Aunt B to pay up came and went without a single lira coming our way. We had no choice but to push for legal collection. The cops went to her place, but she pretended not to be home. Spoiler alert, she was totally home, just being really quiet. The police had to get a search warrant to enter. When they finally got in, they found Aunt B had sold everything she owned. She was all packed up, ready to flee the country illegally, to avoid paying and start a new life abroad. But here's where it gets really crazy. When the cops tried to arrest her, she went full feral cat on them. She actually clawed one officer's eye, causing permanent damage. So, back to court we went. This time, Aunt B was facing a laundry list of charges. I'm not sure I can legally list everything, but let's just say assaulting a police officer was just the tip of the iceberg. The judge handed down a severe sentence, 18 years and 9 months in prison, with no chance of parole for at least 15 years. Remember how she'd sold everything to flee? Well, the court took the amount she owed us, recalculated for current exchange rates and taxes, out of that money. The rest was put in an account for her son to access when he turns 18. Speaking of the kid, turns out his behavior was even worse than we thought. His dad took him to a psychiatrist, who basically concluded that the child had significant behavioral issues resulting from years of poor parenting. He's now in a pre-military boarding school for troubled kids, which he absolutely hates. As for the money, I'd love to say I used it to rebuild my grandfather's kit, but with the recent changes to import taxes, the amount has grown to be substantial, like hilariously so. As much as I'd love to blow it all on Gundam kits, I've got to think about the future. So for now, it's sitting in a savings account, growing day by day until I graduate. I've been working in security for over a decade now, and let me tell you, it's not always the most exciting job. But after bouncing around different gigs, I finally landed this sweet position at an industrial site about 2 years ago. It's a big place with all sorts of businesses, including a storage facility that's open late. The pay is decent, and I actually enjoy the occasional night shift. It's peaceful, you know? Anyway, things had been running smoothly until recently. One of the units got demolished, and suddenly we had to change up the rules for the storage facility. Now anyone coming in between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. needs to show an access code. It's not a big deal, just a quick 30-second check to keep everything secure. Most folks are cool about it. They get it's part of the job, and they're in and out in no time. But there's always gotta be that one person who makes life difficult, right? So, there I was, manning the security barrier on a chilly Tuesday night. It was about 10:30 p.m. when this guy in a beat-up sedan pulls up. I greeted him politely and asked if he was trying to access the site. The man's response was unexpectedly hostile. He questioned why it mattered to me, his tone clearly confrontational. Keeping my composure, I explained that I needed to know his purpose for entering the site due to security protocols. I assured him it would be a quick check. The man's hostility escalated. He refused to provide any information, demanding to know who I was and why it concerned me. Maintaining my professionalism, I calmly explained the policy requiring a valid reason or code for entry between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. I informed him that without this, I couldn't grant him access. His reaction was explosive. He used profanity, questioned my authority due to the absence of a visible badge, and adamantly refused to disclose his destination. Realizing the futility of further discussion, I simply informed him that without compliance, he wouldn't be allowed entry. I turned away, believing the interaction was over. However, the man surprised me by driving around the barrier via the curb and speeding towards the storage unit. Normally, I would have pursued him to remove him from the premises, but this time frustration with entitled individuals who disregard rules got the better of me. I devised a plan. It was nearly closing time, so I manually overrode the gate lock on the storage facility, effectively trapping him inside. I then returned to secure the front gates. As a precaution, I notified the police in case the man decided to contact them. Approximately 40 minutes later, my phone began ringing incessantly. The emergency contact number flashed on the screen at least 15 times. but I deliberately ignored each call. My shift wasn't scheduled to end until 4:30 a.m., meaning our difficult visitor would be confined for the entire night. When morning arrived, I leisurely made my way to the gates. As I opened them, I couldn't resist waving at him with an exaggerated, smug grin. The expression on his face was one of utter disbelief and frustration. The incident's aftermath proved even more satisfying. After reporting his behavior to the site owners, they promptly served him with an eviction notice. As he was leaving, his demeanor now subdued, I couldn't resist one final taunt. I called out to him, wishing him a great day and hoping he had enjoyed his extended stay. The man appeared on the verge of retorting, but ultimately just grumbled and drove away. I watched his departure with a sense of satisfaction at how the situation had unfolded. In this line of work, you encounter all types of individuals. While most are reasonable, there are always those who believe rules don't apply to them. And personally, I'll continue performing my duties, ensuring the site's safety, and occasionally serving a dose of humility to those who need it most.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.